think Uncle Bill's still listening to the intro. Listen, but you're muted again, dude. Or Uncle Bill.
It's gonna play that shit. Like it'll play it again. I guarantee it. Yeah.
Oh, man. Shit. You good now? He's not good. He's not good, fellas.
Come on. Go away.
He's about 10 minutes in the past.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a second.
Got to give Uncle Bill a couple minutes to catch up. You know, he's...
God damn, that's annoying. Okay, so there it goes. Anyway, so this is the thing. Hopefully to God, like this is the last time that I have to deal with any of this shit. Like, because this will definitely be the last show that I will do with this computer. But
yeah, hell of a way to end it.
God damn, man. So just to kind of bring it up though, man, you know, this is a really sad day for both of us because I think like out of all of the genre directors, the guy that I enjoyed watching the most in terms of just interviews and Q&As and his thoughts on his films and just films in general was William Friedkin. Like, I don't think anybody else even comes close, really.
Nah, absolutely. Like I was telling you earlier, like it over the last couple of years, he's really become like my favorite director. Like not just because of the movies, even like obviously most of the movies are just fantastic, but just because of like who he was off when he wasn't behind the camera, just him in interviews and the lectures he would do, you know, all that stuff's out there on YouTube. I've listened to like every single one of them multiple times. Just
yeah, me too.
Listen to him just to get a laugh because he was hilarious. But yeah,
if anybody hasn't ever seen him, like just do a Q&A or do like a live kind of show or anything like that. Like he's one of the most entertaining people just to watch. Like some people are just naturally gifted at public speaking and like, you know, I think Kevin Smith was one of those guys too, honestly, like before, you know, I don't know, a couple years back, but like in the early days, like he could get up there and talk about anything for hours and make it entertaining. And so could Friedkin.
Yeah.
I mean, he could read a phone book and make it entertaining. He was also one of the most direct and like, I don't know, charismatic directors that I've ever seen talk about film too. Up there with like Tarantino and all the guys that can really talk about film and understand film. Yeah.
Yeah, he cared about the product, the final product. He wasn't worried about it being popular. He wasn't worried about it being, you know, pleasing, crowd pleasing, anything like that. Just he did like what he wanted to do, how he wanted it to look. It looked that way. He didn't care who he had to piss off or step over to get to that point, to get the final product how he wanted it. You know,
no, and that's a great part about a lot of his movies too, is that they're very like spur of the moment, guerrilla style filmmaking, and a lot of it works. Like it really does. Like,
yeah,
Curtis says the one word to describe him best would be like uncompromising, which is the way that I feel like he was.
Yeah, like if anybody hasn't seen those Q&As or panels that he did, you know, there's got to be what 6 or 7 of them on YouTube that are, and they're like 2 hours a piece. Some of them are.
There's a couple of them on there that are like some of my favorites. The one where he's at the New York Film Academy, I think, and he's been interviewed by, I can't remember that woman's name, but like he keeps giving her shit throughout the entire interview. That's like one of the best ones if you can find that one. There's one of him at the Dallas Film Fest that's really good too, where he does about a 2 hour long kind of I guess just a Q&A kind of thing about his movies. And then Leap of Faith, which is just like somebody mentioned that, which is a documentary about the Exorcist. And there's another one too that's what's the name of it, Matt? That's just a regular documentary about him.
Is it Friedkin Uncut?
Yeah.
Something like that. I think that's on
Unleashed,
Tubi.
Uncut, something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's great. That's great too.
I actually haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, you haven't seen that?
I didn't know that was on Tubi. So
it's not on Tubi. I rented it on Amazon. Actually, bought it, rented it, whatever you want to say, and watched it a couple different times, and that was great too.
He did
I think that's the one that has that line in it about Pacino. Like, I think that's where that comes from, that documentary.
Okay, yeah, because I've seen the interview I've seen the full interview of him talking to that guy. So maybe in that documentary they used that clip of him talking about Pacino. I don't know for sure, but I know I've seen that full interview. So maybe I've seen like parts of that documentary, but that's hilarious.
Also, somebody brought this up. I forgot about this one too. Friedkin's interview with Nicholas, whatever that guy's last name is, Refn.
Director of Drive.
Yeah, where they're giving they just back and forth throughout the whole thing. Like, it's so great.
And you really can't tell, like, if I feel like Friedkin is like 70% not kidding with him, and then the other 20% he's like, or 30% he's like, he's just giving him shit. But like, part of it, you really think like he's actually like, this guy's fucking stupid, you know? Like,
you can't tell if he's like, if that guy's genuine. He says like, what's the movie he says he thinks is a masterpiece or something, and it's only been out for like hadn't even been out for a year at that point. It was his own movie, but yeah, and then
I can't remember. And then he was like,
was like,
he said, he's like, oh, your movie hasn't been out for 4 years. He's like, Drive hasn't been out for 4. He's like, it's only been 4 years. 4 years isn't even a pimple on the asshole of humanity.
Yeah, he says something like, so if that is a masterpiece, then what is Citizen Kane? And that guy goes, it's pretty good, or something like that.
And Friedkin is just constantly like this, you know,
like,
somebody call an ambulance. This guy needs a medic. Yeah, smart ass comments all the time. But you could tell like it's all in good. It's just like he's not doing it to be an asshole. He really cared about film and his movies and just film in general. And, you know, just would be a guy that you would just want to sit down and talk to for a couple hours.
I'll tell you another guy too that comes to mind is John Landis. I mean, whatever you think about John Landis, you know, as a human being and a director, after all that stuff, like, his interviews are also infinitely entertaining. Like, his knowledge of film and the way that he does interviews is great. But I think that Friedkin's probably the best. So, I mean, on YouTube, there's an endless array of like interviews that he's done that you can go through, and like some of them are bigger podcasts, some of them are like he's at a film, you know, some sort of film show or at a Q&A at a film convention or something, and he just does something there. But they're all like worth watching for sure.
It's just the stories, man, that he would tell. Like, he talks obviously about all the films that he made, or most of them at least, but you know, there was a couple of good stories about him talking to he tells them in those videos about him casting Linda Blair for The Exorcist.
Yeah.
You know, asking her questions.
Yeah,
you know,
I remember
that. She's like, you know, he's like, well, in this scene, you know, with the cross, with the crucifix, you know, you have to masturbate with a crucifix. And he's like, do you know what that is? And Linda Blair, he said, was like, yeah, I know what that is. And doesn't everybody do that? Or
yeah, she said something like, don't you do that? Or something like that.
And then he was like, you're hired.
Yeah. That was something else that was great about Friedkin. Before we get into talking about his movies, which we're going to too, one of the things that I loved about him, other than the fact, of course, that he didn't like do a lot of films with big name actors. Like, he usually cast a lot of his films, you know, were like actors you may have never seen, or character actors or things like that. He never really made anybody audition. Like, he just had conversations with them, and then he would, like, based on those conversations, you know, he could figure out if they would work in the film, or if they could get along with each other, he would have them just kind of like talk to each other and things like that. So it's very similar to the way David Lynch talks about, like he would just sit down with the people for his films, and they would just talk to each other and see if they could get along to make the films, which I think seems to have worked better in a lot of those films than holding like a traditional audition process and going through all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, because he wanted to get along with them like on a more personal level, I guess, to feel like maybe he could trust them. It wasn't so much because he would talk about how he wouldn't rehearse. There were not a lot of there wasn't a lot of rehearsing going on.
Yeah,
A lot of the stuff,
and very few takes too.
Yeah,
Like he would do between 1 to 3 takes of anything, and like there's some great stories about that too. On that freaking To Live and Die in LA special features, like there's there's a bunch of stuff on there about like he wouldn't tell them that he was recording. He would just be like, all right, let's just try to like, rehearse this scene. And they would just do a scene, and he would record the whole fucking thing and be like, all right, we got it. And they would be like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, we got that take. Let's move on. It's like, they thought they were just like rehearsing the scene, but like, he wanted it to feel real, like
real and
spontaneous.
relaxed.
Yeah.
That's like the only way you can do it, real. I mean, like, and it's genius if you think about it. It's such a simple thing, but it's genius. And you get these takes that are, natural, realistic. They don't feel polished up or anything, which none of his movies, well, most of them don't have that kind of polished up feel. They feel like,
no
documentary style, which is something that a lot of people have said about his stuff.
And I don't think you really get to a point where anything feels like it's a Hollywood, like made for Hollywood movie until you get to like, it's after To Live and Die in LA, probably. I would say Blue Chips, strangely enough, like maybe not even that, maybe like Rules of Engagement or The Hunted or something like that. Blue Chips still even feels like it's like a freaking film because like it doesn't have a good ending. Like it doesn't have a happy ending whatsoever.
Yeah, he didn't like happy endings. I get the vibe that he didn't really care. And that's just calling back to, again, he did not give a shit about crowd pleasing. That's for sure.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to acknowledge the chat though, because there is a ton of people in here for Freaking, and God bless y'all for coming in for. If there's anybody that you should come into a show for, it should be him. So I'm glad that there's a lot of people here. But we've got, of course, some of the regulars who I'm always like appreciative of. We got Carta's in here. We got Wes Ray, Dirk's in here, Texas HX, TJ's here, a couple of new ones too. Trev Endeavor. That's hard to say. The Mayor, Horrid Films, Alyssa Milano, star of Teen Wolf 3, Eric Fedget, Dick Fitzwell, of course. Always makes me happy to say that name. Killer Pizza, Ken Carlson, Sean, Rob Zilla, Adrian James, lots of people. So, yeah, this is just a night to, I guess, just remember Freakin' and a lot of his work and talk about some of our favorite films and stories and things like that, too. Unknown's here, too, and Radkins is here. It's good to have you here, too, man. So I'm going to start just kind of like going back, and you mentioned the documentary style that Freakin' was known for, which actually starts from an actual documentary, like one of the first things that he ever did, which was a film by the name of The People versus Paul Crump, which was a documentary about a man who was on death row who at that time Freakin' believed was falsely accused of a crime that he didn't commit. And that guy certainly made a, convincing enough argument that he was being convicted of a crime that he didn't commit. And because of that movie, it got that guy a stay of execution. Like they did not go through with, because that documentary, they did not go through with the death penalty, which is insane that's his first film really. And because of that film, that guy lived. If you think about
1962, for that, and that was all the way back in the 60s. So
yeah. Now what's weird about that though, to me though, man, like I don't know if you watched any later interviews, but Freakin' would kind of do a 180 on that and be later in life, he was like, he believed that guy actually did commit those crimes.
Did he ever
And
really say that he thought for sure? Like
yeah,
I
there
think that,
was a show, um, a, it was like a podcast that he was on, and I can't remember which one it was, but whoever the host was got really offended by that too, because I guess they thought they were going to get him on there and he was going to be like, this social justice warrior kind of thing with that. And
mm,
then when they asked him about it, he was like, yeah, I made that movie then, but I think that like now, based on like what I know now, that he may have, like, he said
right.
something to that effect. And that the woman that was in that podcast was just like aghast because like I think that was a big
Yeah.
reason why she had him on there too.
I
But
think I know the one you're talking about. Yeah, it was like him at the table with that woman, and like they had the
yeah,
screens behind them and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember
I
that.
wish I could remember that one, which one that was, but like
I can't
did
remember
she
the name.
she really busted his balls after that for kind of flipping on what he thought. But
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
I
regardless of that, though, the achievement really of that, and again from 1962, that would have been unheard of for a documentary to come out, and then for somebody to be taken, off of death row for a documentary that came out about them like that. You never hear about that happening like back then.
yeah.
So even if he may have like changed his mind later based on, I don't know if he's, evidence that he might have thought, obviously over the years thought more about some of the evidence. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, even if he did change his mind about it, it's still an achievement of some
It's
sort.
a hell of a way to start off a career, man. Yeah. I mean, if that's the first thing you do, and because of that, it got him, a lot of notoriety and it got him a lot of attention. It also got him like a bunch of different projects. And one of those projects, which there's a great story about this too, is the Alfred Hitchcock Hour.
Yep.
Now, this was the original, this was in 65. So this is the original Hitchcock show, where Hitchcock actually had something to do with it, to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great story though,
Mm-hmm.
where Friedkin wanted to meet Hitchcock, and he finally shows up on set, and I think he said he only showed up to read the opening kind of monologues.
Yeah, wasn't it the last episode of that Hitchcock show
it
that
was.
Friedkin was
Yeah.
directing? Friedkin was
Yeah.
directing the last episode, and Hitchcock showed up. And he did say, yeah, he would only show up to read those cards, for the
He called them
beginning.
idiot cards. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
He would call them idiot cards because talking about cue cards.
exactly.
And so he's like, so he showed up to do that. And the only thing I think he met Hitchcock, he ran into him. And the only thing that Hitchcock said to him was something like, my directors are supposed to wear suits, because he was like dressed in just what Friedkin dressed in, I guess,
He said, he goes, usually our directors wear ties.
That's what it was.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he said, nice to meet you, Mr. Hitchcock, and he said that he said that he like shook Hitchcock's hand, and Hitchcock
That was what he said to him.
put
Yeah.
his hand out like a dead fish, And he said usually Mr. Friedkin, our directors, wear ties, because apparently Friedkin wasn't wearing the right kind of tie or any kind of tie at all. And then, of course, the rest of the story, years and years later, when Friedkin was receiving an award. Do you know what award that was? Was it for The Exorcist or?
I want to say it was French Connection, but I don't know.
Okay, yeah. And then so he was at the award ceremony. Hitchcock is sitting down near the front row. Friedkin goes up on the stage, gets his award, comes back down, and he had a clip-on tie, one of those cheap, it just clips onto the collar of your shirt. And he said he walked past Hitchcock and goes, "How do you like the tie now, Hitch?" Calls him. And, he says Hitchcock probably didn't even remember who the hell he was or anything like that. But it's just, one of them quippy, quick kind of things that Friedkin is known.
And that's another great thing about him, too. He didn't give a shit who you were. Like, he was busting everybody's balls, like, constantly. He had no fear of, like, people or, confrontation or anything like that
No.
whatsoever.
And the best thing about it is, I think the reason why I like him being that way so much is because sometimes you get the wrong types of people that are like that don't give a shit about who they're, if they offend somebody, or and they're just assholes, and they're coming
Yeah,
across. But Friedkin never like, you're agreeing with all of his reasonings for being that way. It's not like he's a bad guy and he's just a dick. You can tell that he's just a passionate person,
yeah.
and he cared about everything like deeply that he's talking about as far as film goes and all that. And so him just talking that way and having no filter only made him more likable in my eyes.
It's true. And he also was never formally trained in film. He never went to film school or anything like that. And he said this before in a lot of different interviews, like he watched films. I don't know how the hell you would do this, by the way. Like I've watched a million films and I would have no earthly idea how to direct a film or anything like that.
Right.
But somehow or another, like through watching some of these, like, some of these classic films, especially, I think, of course, Citizen Kane was one of his favorites. He
Yeah.
watched a lot of the foreign directors, a lot of like great French cinema, a lot of great, European cinema, and would constantly go back to those and say that those were some of his best. And like I said, I don't know how you do that, but apparently just through like his own will, like he could envision how a movie would look and how it
Mhm.
would turn out. And he would just watch a lot of these films for inspiration and that was his film school basically. And then he just threw a couple of breaks, like doing the documentary and being able to get on and do, Hitchcock show. Like he just learned through experience on doing all these different projects, which was insane to me to even think about.
Yeah. I mean, how I don't know if you could ask for a more successful career based on how he started it. Like just starting with a documentary and like open doors all the way from the time he started directing all the way until the end. Like just
Yeah.
open doors, green lights the entire way through his life. So I mean, it's like, although it's like terrible and sad that he's gone now because he's one of the great directors like of all time. Just that career. I mean, he has such a run of just near 5-star films in a, like, just 5-star, 5-star, 5-star to me at least. And I'm not just saying that like because I'm a big fan of him or he's my favorite director, but I mean, I'm watching some of these and rewatching them, and every time I rewatch a lot of these movies, they only get better, and they just stand the test of time. Like I was watching
Well,
To Live and Die in L.A. earlier, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this movie is. I mean, how could you not fucking like that movie? For God's
well,
sake!
and I think we're going to get into like why that is, like why a lot of those films do stand the test of time. But I want to skip over a couple films because number one, I've never seen them, and number two, I don't think they are as important to like what we're gonna, like his filmography is some of the films to come later. But so he did Good Times, not the show, but there's a movie. He did The Birthday Party with Robert Shaw. Now that's, pretty big
I've been,
name.
yeah, I've been looking for watching that movie. I can't really find it anywhere, but that one has been kind of on my like list of films of his that I haven't seen that I'm kind of wanting to see. I've heard him talk about that one in a couple of those
Yeah.
interviews. So
I feel like that would be a hell of a combination of people. Like both those guys would be kind of unbudgeable in terms of like, their styles.
yeah,
Then he did in '68. He did The Night They Raided Minsky's, which I have heard of actually, but never seen. And '70 he did The Boys in the Band.
yeah, I've heard a bit about that one as well.
Yeah, but really, like the next big leap, and probably one of the most influential films of all time, is 1971's The French Connection, which becomes the template for pretty much every buddy cop film that's ever made after that.
Yeah.
And there's so many great stories about that damn movie that I don't even know where to begin because he took everything that he knew about documentary filmmaking and applied it to an actual feature length film, even to the point of like a lot of people were saying like not getting permits to shoot
Mhm.
scenes,
Yeah.
staging that whole like car chase scene without like really getting any
No
like motion.
no permits, no closing off streets, no nothing. Just like let's start here and just like let's just hope it fucking works, and then film it and go. And that's why like the crashes in that are unplanned when they hit other cars and shit. That's just, I mean, it's unthinkable. You can't
It
do
is.
that.
It's what's amazing about that movie to me more than anything is that nobody got hurt or died on that movie
Yeah.
because you're talking about, you know, a whole high speed car chase that is in actual traffic. You
Mhm.
know, of course they block some things because they can't
Right.
like they block some like with the scene with the stroller and the cans and all that
Yeah,
shit.
that's
Can't
obviously
track it.
planned. Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of the rest you can tell because it's just so crazy. Like, you know, that there's no way you could even plan to shoot something the way that it comes out.
Mhm.
In a lot of the action sequences, but not just the big action sequences, but also the way that everybody acts and talks in that movie is clearly not staged. And I think it has to do with the fact that he just did so few takes and just let them go out there
Mhm.
and kind of, you know, improvise off one another. It feels like it's really like happening in front of you.
There's a real funny story. I don't know if you heard the story, and I can't repeat it verbatim, but from the French Connection, where he was trying to get, um, I don't know if it was Roy Scheider or the other guy. He was trying to get him to act like he's cold when he's standing outside, and he's like, you got to do this with your hands to make it look like you're really cold." And he kept telling him to do it over and over again, and the guy was like, well, you want me to do this or that? Why don't you get in front of the camera and you show me what you want me to do? So Friedkin just jumps in front of the camera. He's like, this, I want you to do that. Is it this fucking hard? Like, act like you're cold. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know the whole story, but it was something to the effect of that. Like, just getting in front of the camera and being
I
shown.
know. You know, another thing about that movie too was he really did not like Hackman when he first met him.
Gene
Thought he
Hackman.
was, yeah, thought he was incredibly kind of boring. I remember him saying that, and
That's I
just
think who the
was.
guy. Yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, because there is a scene in the movie where he's kind of just standing outside, like yeah, freezing his ass off. But
Yep.
yeah, Hackman, like, uh, first of all, Hackman was amazingly pretty green around that time period. I think he wasn't like Gene Hackman at that point in time, like
Right.
the huge movie star that he would become. But you know, I feel like that he was also not a very good improviser, not a very good, you know, ad libber as well, and that is kind of a requirement
For Freakin'.
in a lot of Freakin's movies. And because of that, I think he got his balls busted pretty bad on that movie as well by Freakin.
Well, that
And
story is a perfect example of it for sure.
yeah, and there's, you know, a lot of the scenes in the movie like that are the shakedown scenes. This is the part about this movie that is the most interesting to me. So
Hmm.
Freakin, to kind of research the film, he goes in with a couple of real life New York police detectives, and he embeds himself with them. They go out, they make arrests. Like I think they even let him like arrest people at some
Mhm.
point. Like
Yes.
he was handcuffing people for just for the project, you know, to get a
Hmm.
feel for what it was really like to be a cop at that time. And so he really did that and applied everything that he learned to the French Connection, to that movie. So the way that the police talk in that is the way that he really heard them talk. And the way that people acted is the way that they really acted. And that's kind of what kills me about all the Disney shit about, you know, them taking out, you know, certain things from the movies because that was just a period of time. Like, and he captured that period of time. And that was like based on reality,
Yeah.
not based on a bunch of bullshit. Like he
Yeah.
actually went out with these people
Not
and
trying to
that's
be
yeah.
edgy, not trying to be
No.
controversial. It's just real life like that. And you can't cut that stuff out like of art or film, or you just can't do that. And that's why people are in such a uproar about it, you know, is because you just can't delete stuff and expect, it to be whitewashed for, you know, current days where you can't be offensive or anything like that because we don't want to offend anybody. We got to have it all sanitized and make sure it's palatable. You know, that's not, it's not real life. And so like that, I bought the Blu-ray here is obviously worth a bunch of money now because it's got the uncut version, which is only a couple of lines or so that they cut out of that streamed version. So on future releases of this, who knows? Like until we get another release, who knows if they're going to include the entire movie with the lines in it that they cut out for streaming. But if they release it without that stuff, man, that just says a lot about what physical media is going to mean in the future, because that's why we say, like, keep your shit. Don't get rid of stuff that potentially could be edited or deleted in the future, because you're not going to have, that's not the real movie. It takes away from the actual original piece of art, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and it kind of feels like you're taking a piss on the guy too, in terms of like, I mean, he put his entire heart and soul into making these movies at those time periods, and to the point of, you know, being a cop, like for real, and just to do that, it feels like it takes the piss out of him. You know, it's a slap in the face to somebody that actually was like, had a vision and was trying to make a film. And I hate watching movies nowadays where you can tell that the director has no vision. They have no plan for what they're just kind of like hired on to do shit and like have to follow a certain formula. Whereas you can tell, especially during this time period, for the next 10 years, maybe even for the next 15 years, like you can tell that it's what a freaking movie is. Like when a freaking movie is out, that's who made it. And that's something that's just, you know, not done that much anymore at all.
No, he
Carpenter's
has
one.
vibe. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you just don't. It's hard. It's hard to get like the same vibe, and not in like not like every movie feels the same way. But you know what I mean. Like it has that Friedkin kind of stamp, and it's hard to do that kind of. And he was able to do it, and you knew that it was him because again, they all feel very real and not scripted in a way.
Yeah. So let's see a couple of things from the chat here real quick. Yes, Jack, he died. Yeah. Earlier, we didn't plan this or anything. Yeah. Just to be doing it. Mayor, Good Times is the Sonny and Cher movie. Yeah. I probably should have specified that he did a movie with Sonny and Cher.
Yeah, that was very early on.
Trevin Dever says he leveled the provocative stuff with bleak endings. Yeah, he certainly did. Coco, that was a good point from the guy who isn't Uncle Bill. Keep your shit. Well, I should have probably introduced Matt like at the beginning.
Yeah, that's all right.
I mean, I feel like we've done enough shit together that people,
Yeah. I'm a big fan of keeping your shit. I keep too much shit. I think we all do. But in this case, it pays off because you have the actual film and not the edited version that Disney decides is what is okay for you to watch and what is not okay for you to watch. So fuck Disney.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous, man, that movie. But you know what my favorite scene is in that movie, The French Connection? Like, and I can't tell you why this is, but I think it's just the level of detail and knowing that he knew exactly what to do in this sequence. It's probably not anything you're going to think that it is either, but for some reason, it's so meticulous and so well done that I watch it over and over again. Is the scene where they tear the car apart, looking for the
drugs.
The drugs. There's something about that whole scene where you know that's exactly how that would have gone down, like the way that they do that, like to try to find, and it's incredibly well made scene.
Did he talk about how he did that about taking the car apart, because in the actual case that they kind of used this film as the, to tell the story of, that they did that in real life. Didn't they do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, they did. They actually like really tore a car apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing really staged about that. Like it was, as real as that is, like they just filmed it. So yeah, there's a scene towards the end where they're, they know that, or at least he knows that drugs are hidden in this car, but they can't find it. So they're going through like just ripping the car apart, like piece by piece.
Every
And
little thing you can think of, take out of the car, they take it out.
And finally get to a point where they take off like the fucking, I don't know how to explain what it is. It's like the rubber part that goes around your doors and stuff.
The door
and
frame,
the frame. Yeah.
And it's like hidden in there.
Yeah. So I mean, and there's so many good scenes in that movie, man. So there's that sequence. There's a sequence on the subway where he's chasing I mean, there's so many good scenes. There's the chase, like the actual chase itself. There's the shakedown scenes in the bar and like
that. Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably my favorite scene, is either when he's down in the subway and they're walking back and forth between the subway car and the whatever, the inside of the station there, and he's like doing this and that and this and that.
Yeah.
And it goes back and forth like 10 times because he's
they both can see each other and they know what they're doing, and they're just trying to he's trying to get away and he's trying to like find him. Yeah.
That's a great intense scene, and probably that or the shakedown in the bar early on in the movie. That, because it's like, again, that's just Friedkin putting what he saw with his time with the police officers. Like that's how they did it. That's how they cased the joint. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's just so realistic.
Oh shit! The other scene too. Man, there's too many to really even go into, but the scene where he's almost shot, like when he's walking, back to his apartment and all that, and the guy's on the roof, like with the sniper rifle, and like he shoots like right beside of him, and then he has to run up the flight of stairs to try to like get to him.
Mm-hmm.
It all seems real. To me, it's one of the best examples of a cinema verite kind of style where everything, really is unrehearsed, because it is unrehearsed a lot of times. Like it's just done in front of you, and then they're filming it, and it never gets old because of that, man. Like you can go back and watch it because seems like you're watching just like a reality show, unfold in the form of a movie.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know. I can't say
so spent a long time talking about the French Connection. It's just so good.
Well, it is, man. I would watch it like every day if I could. Like, and he won the Academy Award for it, and then would go on right after that to fucking do probably one of the most influential movies of all time, which is The Exorcist, and that's just now having its 50th anniversary
this year,
and we're just now getting to see that piece of shit Exorcist Believer trailer that'll, dampen the the entire like franchise, I'm sure, once again.
Yeah, man. Somebody Dirk commented on my poster. I've just put this up recently, that Exorcist poster. Both the Possession and the Exorcist are both by the same artist. And I'm like totally blanking on his name right now, so I can't tell you who it is. But he's done a lot of work with Mondo and stuff. But yeah, The Exorcist.
Is it Justin Edmondson?
I don't remember. Who it is off the top.
Jason is it Jason Edmondson?
I don't think it is. Okay. If Garrett was in here, he would be able to tell you right away. But when I'm put on the spot, I can't fucking remember shit. So he's done a lot for Mondo and stuff like that. But that was one that he did like last year, I think. But I mean, it does suck that Friedkin has to pass away, on the 50th anniversary of like his most notorious film, the film that he's known for, hitting 50 years. It sucks. And of course, like you said, the new one coming out, like I made the joke, like he probably saw that trailer and it was like, you know what? Not on my watch.
Man, it's brutal to watch that and just know that, I mean, when I wasn't alive when The Exorcist came out. That film was made in 73. But everything you go back and watch, that film basically changed movies, because that was the one of the first film where people were going to that just to, like, word of mouth to see what would happen, because they heard people were passing out and throwing up, and, like, just this whole kind of wild, all these wild stories about what would happen if you saw the movie. And it is still, like, terrifying. It's still, like, a very effective film. It's not as effective now as it was then, because you've seen everything under the sun now. But back then, to do anything related to religion in
Yeah.
a horror film like that was, I mean, ballsy as hell, for one thing, but also the way that he did it. And there's a great story that he had where, you know, he said that he made this movie was about the mystery of faith, and
Hmm.
Sorcerer was about the mystery of fate. So he was kind of like, he always had like a theme for the movies that he was doing, like some sort of theme like that. And it wasn't a movie that was pro religion, and it wasn't a movie that was, con religion. It was a movie that was just, you make up your mind about what you think happened,
Hmm.
which they don't do enough of that shit anymore. They're always trying to lead you into some half-assed ending
Hmm.
nowadays with movies, so everybody's happy. It's like,
Right.
just
And he played that line between, do you like, are you for what's going on? Are you against it? The battle between good and evil, not just literally good and evil, like Satan and God or whatever, but just the decisions in your life and just like the human experience kind of thing. Like all of his movies, or at least
yeah,
a good handful of them, have that feeling. To Live and Die in LA has that, Cruising has that, The Exorcist has the
yeah,
French Connection. All these movies have that general theme of the decision between the good side of you and the not so good side of you, of life, really. um, I
yeah.
brought, dude, I brought that. I haven't like even touched this Blu-ray in so many years.
Oh, I've got the same one. Yeah.
That digibook version of it.
Yep.
I remember this when this came out at Best Buy. I was stoked on this just because it was one of the early like book editions that I had bought like this, and this is, and they even came out with one more after this, I think, that had the stairs on the cover. I never got around to getting that one, but yeah, I did pre-order the new 4K. Obviously, I got one of the UK editions, not the Bible one, but the one that's like a step below that. I think it's like
I got that. I got the same one. Yeah. The one that was
Yeah,
out real briefly, then sold out. And then there's like three tiers. There's the Bible one that was like ungodly amount of money, but
yeah,
like was only, very limited. Then there was the one that's the steel book
with a
is
slip
included
cover,
with it. Yeah.
and it has the posters and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. And then there's the one that's got the picture of Reagan. That's kind of like the standard
right.
version, I guess. That's coming out here recently. But you know what? I would say this: like, there's nothing that we can say about the Exorcist that would be better than just go watch the Leap of Faith
Mhm.
documentary, because I mean it's a great documentary just about that film and about everything that went into that film, and it's on Shutter. I'm pretty sure still, and it was, you can, I'm sure you can watch it other places as well. But man, like, you talk about applying like that kind of feel, that documentary feel to a horror film. He didn't think it was a horror film, but I mean, I'm just going to call
Mhm.
it a horror film for this purpose.
Right.
Uh, and applying that and just having like the ultimate kind of success with that way of doing it. Like, it's the perfect horror film in a lot of ways, or the perfect film about,
Faith.
whatever, the faith drama
Yeah,
about faith that you want to, however you want to look at it.
it's
It's
funny.
like,
Like,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, man.
well, I was just gonna say, like back in the day when it's one of those movies when you're a young kid and you're getting into horror. It's still one of those movies I feel like that younger people are kind of I would hope, still talking about and kind of thinking of it as one of those ones that you have to see. It's going to scare the pants off you or whatever. Like that's when I'm only 27. So even when I was a kid, like we were talking, I remember being at a friend's house, spending the night, and his uncle lived next door to him. And he was like, my uncle has The Exorcist on VHS. Let's go over and borrow it from him. And we were like, oh, like, you sure you want to do that? Like, okay, we'll do it. So we went over next door and got The Exorcist on VHS and brought it back over to the house, my buddy's house that we were staying at. And just that experience of like watching it with like a couple of friends, at midnight in the dark, and it's funny because that's a movie like when you're that young and you're not really understanding the underlying messages of the movie or the underlying vibes. You're just watching it because it's supposed to be this scary. You're watching it for the scenes with Reagan possessed and all that. Yeah. But then you grow up and into adulthood and you're watching it and it has a totally different vibe to it and message to it, but it's still just as terrifying, only in a different way now, as an adult watching it. So it's effective in both ways.
I think that's a lot of his films work that way too. Like you watch them like at a younger point and then you go back and watch them again and they like completely change, in terms of, especially this, like you're right, especially The Exorcist. Like, I mean, there's a ton of great stories about the making of The Exorcist, like I said.
Yes.
But and I don't want to get into like all of them.
There's so many.
Probably my favorite story, just to get like a favorite, if there was one, would be one of two, and that would be the one where he actually used like live rounds, like he used a pistol. I think it was a pistol or a rifle. I can't remember which one. To get the reaction shots that he couldn't get otherwise, he would just wait and shoot blanks on set. And there's a scene where the phone rings and Karras is like, it jolts him, to look. And that was just him like shooting a gun.
Yeah, freaking on behind the camera.
Yeah. To get that kind of startled reaction that he got. The other one is, of course, like the one where he actually like smacks the shit out of the priest, who was a real priest, for the same reason, to get a reaction out of him that he didn't think he could get. Like, so there's a scene at the end of the movie where the priest is given, Karras the last rites and everything, and he couldn't, not the Undertaker finisher, but the actual like, yeah, and he couldn't give the like right emotional kind of tone to the scene. So Friedkin literally just like smacked the shit out of him. And then he's just started shaking, I guess out of anger. I don't know, out of confusion, anger, whatever it was. But then he just filmed him, delivering that. So those are my two favorite
stories about it.
Stories about like the making of that movie.
I would honestly, I don't know what you would say is the scariest scene in the film, or maybe the most terrifying.
I know what it is for me. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say, let me tell you mine. It might be the same, but okay. I feel like it's a scene that, again, you watch it as a kid and you don't really get it, but you watch it as an adult and it's fucking terrifying. Is the dream sequence with his mother, Karras's mother.
That's mine. The scene where she's coming up out of the subway and then like she's talking, but he can't hear like what she's saying or anything.
Dude, I just got fucking chills, dude. It's literally like, because it is like a nightmare that you.
It is exactly like a real.
And there's nothing scary per se about it. Like there's no. I don't remember if the face flash is in that scene or not, but she's just standing at the top of the stairs at the subway, and he's like waving at her and yelling, and she says something, but she's far away. You see her mouth move. You can't hear anything. He's yelling. You can't hear him yelling. And she just turns around and walks back down into the subway, and he's like running after her. And it's just insane.
Well, it's that dream that you have that's like the futility of like when you're running but you're moving too slow and you're trying to get away from somebody but you're going slow and they're going regular speed. It's that whole
Yeah.
thing of like, he's trying to catch up with her and like he can't, and just the
And just
anxiety of that. Yeah.
yeah, and just even the visual um implications of that scene of her like walking back down, down into the subway. It kind of has some
Yeah.
implications of like
The
her passing
It
away.
reminds me. I don't know if you watch It's Always Sunny, but it reminds me that the implication is.
I think I've seen
It's the,
that. Yeah.
yeah, it's the
But man,
implication.
that I think, like, as a person who's seen a lot of horror movies, and like you have to kind of be, I don't think, like, as a younger person who hasn't really seen many scary or horror films or just like dramatic films in general, I don't think it would affect you as much as like when you kind of are older and you've seen more films and you kind of have more life experience. Maybe even it's such a scary moment in the movie that has nothing to do with Reagan or the possession or the devil or anything. It's just this dream
Exactly.
sequence.
Yeah.
It's a very short sequence, but it's like nightmare fuel, and nothing is scary on the screen as far as like demons or
Well,
anything.
there's no like buzzes and bells
No,
and there's no gore or anything like that. But it's just everything about it is so surreal and just so haunting about that scene that it still works to this day. Yeah.
it's got to be maybe arguably one of the greatest scenes in horror film history. I would go to as
And
far
it's
as
not
that.
even probably the 10th most famous scene in that film,
No,
I would say, because you've got everything. I could name 5 other scenes that people would probably know more than that one. That's how great that film is.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but moving on, because this is a film that doesn't get any real notice anymore that I can tell. And it's probably one of my favorite all time films now. And I probably watched it about 2 years ago, something like that, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, for the first time, and was completely blown away by it. And I've watched it probably 10 times since then. But 1977's Sorcerer,
Mhm.
which has absolutely, I think the title hurts this film more than anything, has absolutely nothing to do with, um,
Magic or
the
sorcery.
sword and sorcery kind of like films that were coming out around that time. It's a film about the mystery of fate and how it is that everything kind of intersects in your life that to come to a certain conclusion that you have no real control over. And that's all of us, to agree or another. But this film really explores that in an amazing way by putting all these guys together in this remote jungle situation where they don't have any choice but to drive this truck to this other town to try to deliver this dynamite. And so that's the setup to the fact of like everything that can go wrong, in this way goes wrong. And it's like that they're all destined to these certain outcomes.
Hmm.
Um, but everything about that film, the cinematography and the locations and everything are so amazing and grand. And I don't mean grand like swell or anything. I mean
Hmm.
grand as in like these huge location shots and the way that it's filmed. It's just got to be one of the best visual films of all time.
Just the bridge sequence alone, which is obviously the one that everybody goes to because it's on the poster and it's like one of the biggest scenes in the film, but just how they did that and had to build that bridge that cost was it $1 million or $2 million just to build the bridge,
Yeah,
and they had to do it like
because yeah,
like
it's
like
the bridge is the bridge itself is basically like a goddamn Universal ride.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like Universal Studios ride. It's like a hydraulic bridge set up to be able to
sway
hold this
back and forth.
actual
Yeah.
truck. Yeah. It's just crazy, man.
Perfect.
I don't even know how to talk about that movie. We would need like an hour just to talk about that
Well, we
movie.
did talk about it
That's
actually
true.
on
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
free weekend of Freakins. Yeah, if anybody hasn't gone back and watched like Uncle Bill's series Weekend at Freakins, like you covered most of the films. I was on one of the episodes, but you had some other cool people covering the other films. Um, like To Live and Die in LA and stuff, but like
Yeah.
all these we talked about in detail. It's hard though, like not to talk about them in detail whenever you bring them up because they're just like they're some of my favorite films, and like I know they're some of your favorite films. So it's just like they're too good not to just praise, you know. And I'm not like that about a lot of movies at all, but these collection of films, I'm very very into. I mean, I want to show everybody these movies and like watch them with people that haven't seen them and things like that. They're just that good to me.
Yeah. Like I can't like we've already done well in we've both been a part of like covering these films
Yeah,
to a degree or another in great detail, right? But I kind of feel like that you could do that continuously and it still wouldn't do justice to the films. And if talking about them gets like one more person to watch some of these films, I kind of feel like it's worth it
it
in that
is.
regard.
It really
Um,
is. I
and
don't think
Sorcerer is just one of those films that I don't know what happened to it in terms of it got lost in some sort of film purgatory where nobody ever really references it or talks about it now. But it's one that you need to see if you're a fan of film.
it's another. We were talking earlier. Like I don't think it's ever had a great release as far as home video goes. I know there is a Blu-ray out there, or there might be one or two. I could be wrong, but I had thought that maybe Friedkin didn't like the one, or something was done to the one version that's out there as far as maybe the color timing or something that wasn't great. I don't know how true that
I
is. I know
think
he
I
did
think
that
I'd
with
heard that
French
too. Yeah,
Connection too.
yeah.
But this French Connection one was, I think, was the one that was like it's the filmmaker signature series. So it was like I think this is like the correct quote unquote correct version of the movie, and I feel like Sorcerer had a similar problem with the release as far as home video goes. But yeah, like it's due for like a company like Arrow or Kino or somebody to get a hold of that thing and put it out. I mean, because I feel like that would really reignite a fan base.
It needs to be like a huge one of these huge releases that come out. Like it needs a fucking I don't know, like a steel book or something, like some big ass like release. Like a lot of these other, there's so many shitty films that get released by Vinegar Syndrome and Severin that like have these huge releases. And then you think about Sorcerer, which is like a goddamn epic film
It
that
is.
that great directors still reference to this day. I
You know,
just
and I
don't.
don't even blame it on the whole like Star Wars thing, which of course was the some of the reasoning when it came out was the whole Star Wars coming out at the same time and it getting overshadowed by that, right? So
Yeah,
like, but I don't like at this point that doesn't matter anymore. Like it still doesn't have the audience that it deserves. Like it absolutely deserves, and like you said, it's a it's a massive film that like just it's huge in like the what it's trying to do and what it accomplishes and like how anxiety inducing and edge of your seat, like you talk about these shitty action movies that come out
hmm,
nowadays that are like supposed to be like edge of your seat like stuff, they don't even hold a candle to like
no.
the anxiousness of the stuff that you see in something like Sorcerer.
The final 30 minutes of Sorcerer is better than like any Marvel or DC movie that's ever been made. It just is. Like it's better made, it's better shot. There's a sequence like for those people that haven't seen it, I won't like, really talk about it because it kind of gives away the ending, but there's a sequence in the end of that where when I first saw it I was like I 100% did not see that coming, and it's like it's perfect for the film because you think it's going to be like this, that if something's going to happen, it's going to be this big grand, grandiose fucking kind of thing and set up and all this, but that's not really how life works anyway. Shit just happens, randomly,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what happens, and it's the perfect
Yeah.
it's the perfect sequence of the I could talk about it forever. Like people are bringing up shit in the movie to talk about. It's like, dude, I've already talked about it. It's like go back and watch the the
The last 5 minutes of that movie.
yeah. So I mean, we did a whole video on just Sorcerer. So I don't want to.
Dirk says he's never seen it. I don't know, man. You need you need to like expedite that shit right now because I just can't recommend it enough for like just a sit down experience for watching a movie that
Yeah.
you will not be bored. You will not be like it just draws you in like not that many films do, and it's so good at it. Like if anything, maybe the first little bit, like I was caught off guard when I first watched it because it starts off in a certain way, like it starts off with the introducing each character, and the first sequence is subtitled in a different country, and you're kind of like, I was like, am I watching the right movie here? Because it's kind of it's
Yeah,
an
and
odd way to start the movie, but it doesn't.
well, that's kind of what they think hurt the film is because it played like a foreign film, and audiences at that time in the U.S. were not having any of that shit. But it's
Yeah.
really only like the first 20, 30 minutes, like, and then
Even that,
but even so, there's not a lot of dialogue in the movie, which probably hurt it as well. It's a very visual film. But I think the next film is probably, if you took out The French Connection and The Exorcist, it's probably his most infamous film, like after those two. And I'm not talking about the fucking Brinks Job, of course. I'm talking about
yeah,
1980s Al Pacino classic Cruising, which I'd always heard from Runk. I'd never seen it. And Runk Russell, who was he used to be a friend of the show. I mean, he's still a friend of the show. He just doesn't come on that much anymore. He would constantly reference this movie, man, and like how much that he loved it and how great it was. And it is a great movie, but man, it's a fucking tough movie to watch. Yeah.
It's heavy for sure.
There's a lot of shit going on in this movie that's very hard in today's kind of like, atmosphere to even talk about.
Even like behind the scenes, if like some of the shit that they did, like that he did to get the movie made, just that's another one. It's equally as, you talk about stories of the making of the film. You got The Exorcist, which has so many infamous stories about how it was made, and The French Connection, but this one has just as many infamous. I don't know if infamous is the right word. I'm probably not using that word correctly, but you know what I mean? Like just insane behind the scenes making of stories, man. Just like it's almost an American Giallo too, which is kind of a funny. It sort of has that vibe to it. I feel like if you're into those kind of movies, that's what kind of drew me to watch it in the first place. Because Matt,
if we're being honest too, though, it also makes no fucking sense.
It's in a lot of giallos do not.
Yeah, because the same guy shows up in this film 2 different times as 2 different characters that don't have anything to like really do with one another,
and they have different voices.
Yes, and the ending is very, and I'm being generous, like to say it's very ambiguous. And very like, you're either going to love it or hate it. I'll put it that way, because there's not really any room for just kind of like a soft reaction to the ending of this movie. But everything previous to that is pretty amazing for like a lot of different reasons.
I think I almost feel like it's just intentionally confusing because it's hard to talk about the movie if you haven't seen it already, but not even in a sense of like spoilers, because there's no real way to spoil the movie because there isn't a linear this is how it starts and this is what happens and this is how it ends and it has an ending. It doesn't really have an ending. It's just kind of like a up in the air film the entire way through, because you're so confused, because he used the same character would show up twice and you're not even sure if it's the same character, because it's kind of shadowy and dark in a lot of scenes when they do show up again. And it's like the person that got killed in the last scene is the killer in the next scene, and they also have a different voice. And just it definitely warrants multiple viewings to even kind of get a grasp on what you might think the hell is happening.
And it's based on a true story. I mean, in
Yeah.
and of the fact of like just the main plot of it's based on a true story, not the actual ending or anything like that. But you know, it's when it came out, it got completely shit on by a lot of like a lot of people picketed it, and a lot of people like said it was completely distasteful and against the gay community and things like that. I don't think it was, man, if I'm being honest. Like, I think it was in the same vein as like the French Connection. I think it was just him like doing research and presenting something like that he saw. Like, I don't think it was meant to be any other way than that.
No,
That's just,
and in many cases, even filming what he saw and what was actually going on in that scene of underground leather bars and things like that, because that's one of the most infamous stories of the film. The making of it is that when he sent the film in for rating, he included, what was it, 40 minutes of just straight up pornography that he filmed that the people in the clubs were engaging in.
Yeah.
Because he knew that the ratings system, the MPAA, was it, right?
Yeah.
They would cut that. And then so he would be left with most of what he actually wanted to keep in the movie, because he knew they would not let him keep that. But if he added a whole bunch of really crazy shit, like the straight up porn,
yeah,
that they would cut that.
That was a
let him
great
keep
strategy.
the rest.
Yeah. Because it actually probably saved that movie, from.
He actually had stated in recent years that of course he's passed away now, that print of the film exists still.
Oh my
with
God.
the now I'm not
That would be crazy.
like, I want to see it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, would it not be crazy to have that full uncut version?
I think they should include it. I mean, it's kind of a piece of history. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
I don't think it would have to be like Vinegar Syndrome's porno line that would release it now, because who is going to take that and release it? I don't even think Arrow would do it. If it includes stuff like that, they're not going to do it.
No,
because
that's what I'm saying. Like, in today's climate, the way everything is, especially movies, it would be really tough, man, to get that put out anywhere.
He said it in one of the interviews that you can hear on YouTube. He's like, yeah, I think it was at one of the film institutes or whatever that he was at. He said, oh yeah, I still have the original print cut of the film. Like, he's like, oh, he said something like he was going to lend it to them or something, or you guys can watch it. And I'm thinking, my God, that getting a release would be insanity. I mean, the way he cuts around that stuff in the film. And that's another point I wanted to make, is the commentary for that film is like a must.
Oh, I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah. If you're not a fan of commentary, some people don't really like commentaries. I personally don't like to watch a commentary unless I've seen it.
I'm not a huge fan of them either, but I feel like some of them like transcend, commentaries and become something that's entertaining, like all on its own. And this is one of those. You're right.
The commentary is with Mark Kermode on here, which was Mark Kermode, I'm sure, is like having a bad day today as well, because he has said multiple times that Friedkin was his favorite director and The Exorcist is his favorite film. But that commentary for Cruising with Mark Kermode is like so great, because Friedkin just is having a blast. He's telling all the behind the scenes stories about how he was a friend of the guy in the mob or some kind of crime boss that owned this underground leather bar, then he gave them permission to film in there, and all of the X-rated stuff that he was able to film. And none of these people were actors that were in the background. It's just literally just people that were regulars at these bars and these clubs. And of course, Joe Spinell's in it as well. So that's another plus for the movie. And the soundtrack is, I didn't grab it. It's in the other room, but I actually have the Waxwork vinyl soundtrack for Cruising. It's like a 3 LP set. And I think it's out of print now, but it's got a lot of great kind of underground punk music and stuff along with the original score.
I say though, man, it's like, I'll say this with 100% certainty. It's unlike anything that you have seen. Like if you've never seen Cruising and you go see it, like you will never have seen a movie that's like Cruising. Like you won't be like, oh, this reminds me of, no, it doesn't remind you of anything. I guarantee.
I love it. I really love it. I mean, as confusing as it is, and I think it does warrant like multiple viewings, but don't let the confusion scare you off when you watch it, because you're bound to be confused, because like we said, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's, I think, intentionally confusing. And Friedkin was real tight-lipped about it too. You know, he was just always kind of like, well, I don't really know what happened. Like, and we didn't even get into the whole true story that it was.
No. I mean, but like, I mean, there's so much to go into with which each one of these, though. But I mean, like I said, there's still the Weekend at Friedkin series. If you want to get in like this. But I'll say, so in '83 he makes Deal of the Century, which I have not seen, which was kind of like a little like comedy. I'm pretty sure that didn't do that great. Then I guess the next thing that's, and you know, this is another one, man, where we could sit here for a fucking hour and talk about this film, which is, I think it's one of both of our favorites, 1985's To Live and Die in LA. Like I've watched that film probably 10 times in the last 2 weeks. So, because it just came out again from Kino.
Yeah, this was another one, like a long time coming. You know, it's great to have it like on a good release that's widely available, because for a long time it wasn't. You know, Arrow has a version of it, I think, that you can still get in the UK.
Yeah, I've got the Arrow version. It's Region 2.
Yeah, Region B locked. But I just watched this again today for like the 3rd time, and it's great. I know you said you weren't crazy about the 4K transfer on it. I watched both the 4K and then some parts of the Blu-ray. I think they both looked really good. The Blu-ray definitely has better brightness and things like that, but in general, for my set, like what I did with the TV, and I did have to mess with the settings a little bit, to be honest, but I think they both looked great. And like, if you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it, like, this is just, it's a safe buy either way. It's just like,
I think, man, that it might be the most underrated movie, one of the most underrated movies ever made.
Oh, it's great.
Because I think that it is kind of the antithesis of all of the buddy cop movies that were made in the 80s.
Yeah.
So like the Lethal Weapons and, you know, any of those movies that you can think of. What's another one like that? Like, that's like Lethal Weapon. Like there was a ton of them, man. Like Tango and Cash, or fucking, you know, any movies like that. Any kind of feel good, like cop buddy movies. This movie is the exact opposite of that in almost every way.
But it's still badass and enjoyable, like those other films.
Well, I think it's badass because it isn't like that, like any of those films. Like it's an actual, like, realistic look about what would happen if somebody actually like went around acting like that.
Yeah.
And that's the way the film plays to me. And I know people would probably rather hear about The Exorcist or something like that because it's more in pop culture and things like that. But man, when you get down to it, like, I've seen The Exorcist 100 million fucking times, and like, it's a great movie, but To Live and Die in LA and Sorcerer are just as good a movie to me as The Exorcist in different formats. Like, one of them's an action film, one of them's more of a drama, one of them's like, I don't know, a horror film, or however you want to like look at it. But man, To Live and Die in LA is probably one of the most perfect cop films because number one, it looks and plays like a real cop film. Number two, it's got a chase sequence that might be better than The French Connection. Like number three, William Defoe's in it, and he's insane and bony, and like he looks like he's gonna like pass away at any point from emaciation. Number four, it's got one of the most unexpected endings of any action film ever. Number five, the score is probably the
Oh,
best
fuck
score
yeah,
like
man.
of any of his films.
I got the shirt on too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just it's a 5-star movie for me. I just gotta say, like off the bat, it's a 5-star movie for me.
Yeah.
That and Sorcerer, they're both 5-star movies. Like I
I
haven't
mean,
seen The Exorcist in a while. It's up there, but I mean, Sorcerer and To Live and Die in LA are just two perfect movies.
that's what I'm saying to people though. You know, people that have watched these movies like The Exorcist over and over and over again and things like that. Take a chance.
Hmm.
You know, watch something else. Watch To Live and Die in L.A. You know the guy's a good director. It's like I never
Right.
understood that about people. Same goes with music too. Like people will pick a band and they'll like only like like the Black Album by Metallica. Like if you like the Black Album by Metallica, then chances are you're gonna like a lot of their other shit too. Or if you like Back in Black by AC/DC, you're gonna like a lot of their other albums. Listen to some of the lesser known shit. And the same thing with film. Like watch some of the films that are lesser known. Like, yes, The Exorcist is amazing. We all know that. But so is 80% of what this guy did. So
Yeah.
you're
That's
you're
like
in
the
good
first
hands.
thing that I do when I see a movie that really kind of blows me away or just affects me in a certain particular way, even if it didn't blow me away, but I had like a real a strong feeling about it, I immediately go to the filmography of the director and see like, okay, what else looks like something that I might be into, and I want to seek them out and watch them. Albums for bands. It's the same way, like you said, like if one album really strikes you, you shouldn't just continue to listen to that. Go out there and like
Yeah.
find the other shit that, and a lot of people, I think it's like a movie nerd kind of thing in a way, I guess, to be this way where you like just want to seek out more and more and more. But it's frustrating when you're kind of like talking to somebody that isn't like that and they're kind of like, oh yeah, I like this one movie or this one album. And you're like, you mention like all the other stuff that the person has done, and they're like, oh, never heard of that. Never. You're like, what? Like you haven't seen this shit or heard that shit? Like it's you're doing yourself a disservice by not like discovering and being proactive about discovering more stuff by this director or this artist or whatever. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
that's what I don't like about
Couldn't
the
have said it any
mainstream
better. Yeah.
media. Yeah, like the mainstream like media, like the what's on the radio and stuff. You hear the same songs, you see the same movies being promoted throughout the years, and they never talk about the shit that is out there that's just as good. And most people just don't care enough, I guess, to like go on their own and find it out for themselves, to find that there's other shit that's just as worthy.
And in this
I'm
case, like he's probably like one of the most
perfect examples of that.
yeah, perfect example of like the underratedness of, and then he's not even really known for The Exorcist is the weird thing. Like The Exorcist is known, like Carpenter is known for Halloween. Those two things are synonymous, but like freaking no, I mean you may, if you're a huge horror fan, know that he's associated with The Exorcist, but to the common person, The Exorcist is just a film that
Yeah,
freaked everybody out, and they don't know who directed it or anything like
right.
that. They have no fucking idea. But so it's kind of stays hidden. Like his talent and everything kind of stays hidden, and these films don't really get seen, and they need to be seen more often. I mean, there's just no doubt about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like Carpenter's name is definitely more attached to Halloween. And
Yeah,
then you hear about The Exorcist, like you just said. Yeah, it's like it's just The Exorcist. And you say William Friedkin, who's that? Like, well, it's not as and I don't know why that is. I'm not sure exactly, because he literally is the perfect example of if you do know him from The Exorcist, there's a good chance that most people only know it from The Exorcist, and they're like,
Yeah.
they don't look into the other stuff that's like better than The Exorcist in some cases.
And there's man, there I mean, and there's some of his films that I haven't even seen that you can't even really see.
Mhm.
And one of them is right around that time period that he did To Live and Die is Rampage, which I don't think it has a release to my knowledge. Like,
I don't think so. Not that I know
I
of.
would love to see that movie, but I can't ever fucking find it. It's got Michael Biehn. I know a couple of things about it, but I don't know, how to get it or anything like that. Would love to actually see that.
His remake of 12 Angry Men is actually included on the 4K of Kino's original. They released the original 12 Angry Men on 4K.
Yeah, yeah.
That release comes also with William Friedkin's remake on the second disc. So, and that's another one. You're like, William Friedkin did 12 Angry Men? Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
such a different random thing to do.
He did a version of it, yeah, for sure.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I haven't seen that, so I do. I'm going to be making my last minute Kino order here like tomorrow. But I will be getting that 4K, and I look forward to seeing, even though it's the same exact movie, basically just with different actors, because there's not too many ways you can do 12 Angry Men. But yeah, I'm interested to see that one, and like stuff like Bug and Killer Joe. Like I really like both of those movies.
Well, yeah, I mean there was a time period there. I don't know what exactly happened here either. Would love to know the backstory behind how like he had a resurgence there, like in that time
Mhm.
period of like the 2000s, the early 2000s, where like all of a sudden like all this shit started coming out. He did Rules of Engagement. He did The Hunted with and that was when like Benicio del Toro was fucking like huge. He just kind of became hugely popular. So he did those two, then he did Bug, and then he did what was the other one right around that time too that was like kind of a mainstream
Well, he
movie.
did Jade, but that was in '95.
That's right. Well, that was a little bit earlier on, yeah.
Yeah.
But he had like a weird kind of mini studio run of films there. Like after he, had kind of gone underground for a good number of years. And some of those are pretty good films too.
It's
I,
funny to say like he's definitely. I think he's my favorite director, but it's like a couple of these movies that I don't think they're necessarily necessary to see them. But like some of those later ones, I do think though that Bug and Killer Joe would be two that I
I
would
do
say
too
are
because
necessary.
I don't know if Bug feels like a freaking film to me, but Killer Joe definitely does.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I like Killer Joe a lot. I like it better than Bug. Bug
mhm.
doesn't feel like a freaking movie, but it kind of grows on you, and that's a funny
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
No pun intended.
exactly.
But it did. That's how it was for me. Like I was kind of on the fence about it, and then the next day after you watch it, it's kind of one of those ones you're like, man, what the fuck was that? Like, god damn, that was kind of crazy.
Well, and I think Carter is right here. Carter says that they promoted the hell out of Bug back in 2006, but unfortunately, the advertisement. Yeah, me and CK went to see that movie, and when we did, like, I legitimately thought it was a movie about like killer fucking insects, like, and that's what we went into it thinking, and we were just like, when you see that movie, like after that setup, and thinking that's what it's going to be, you're just kind of like, what the fuck, like that's like we couldn't help but be completely disappointed by it, like when we saw it,
Right.
like. But in hindsight, and going back and watching it again, not too long ago for the series of shows, um, it's a crazy ass movie, man. It's really hard to watch, but it's completely unique. And it's just complete, like, just like a lot of the stuff that he did. It's completely unique to itself.
I did end up today. I hate to be that guy, but I did. I like immediately went and pre-ordered that new imprint version of Bug that's coming out because I hadn't pre-ordered it yet, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get it now because you never know with shit like that when a director passes away.
That's true.
You know, it's just kind of like shit starts to disappear. And I was gonna buy it anyway. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to pre-order it necessarily, but I did end up going and just like, let me just secure my copy. It does suck that Kino wasn't able to do their 4K version of it.
Yeah.
Because
well, didn't they fucking have Sorcerer at one time or something like?
They had another one of his films and they didn't disclose what it was other than Bug. So I'm not sure if it was Sorcerer or not.
So apparently towards the end of his life, and now that we know it was towards the end of his life, like he really got fucking hardcore about his films. And, you know,
as far as the releases go,
as far as the releases, because Kino basically said, people that were inside Kino said, you know, that when they were trying to put out a lot of these films, including To Live and Die, like he was incredibly difficult to work with on about the transfers and the way that the films looked and things too. And there was one, like you said, that I thought it was Sorcerer. I don't know where I got that in my head, but I thought that's what it was. And then like they ended up not doing it because it was just too difficult to get him to agree to any of the changes or the transfer or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think they even really got into the work of the release. I think they just canned it, like they didn't even start because they were, the first was To Live and Die, which is like, honestly, it sounds like a miracle that this even got released in the first place.
Yeah.
Because of how much of a pain in the ass it apparently was to get him to finish the work that he needed to do to approve this. And you know, of course, Bug was the next one that they had already announced it and everything. They were like, we're doing this, it's coming out. And then time went on and they're like, we're dropping it. We're dropping Bug and we're dropping this other unnamed film that they had, which could have been Sorcerer. It could have been, for all we know, it could have been
Rampage.
Yeah.
Fuck, I mean, who knows?
Right. So, which is a damn shame because I really was looking forward to the 4K of Bug. Now, the imprint version is just a Blu-ray, so it's not a new transfer, I don't think. But for right now, it's the best we're going to get. I do wonder, you know, now that he's gone, what will happen with some of these titles, especially some of these later ones, but and even some of the early ones. You know, of course, none of these have 4Ks besides now The Exorcist and To Live and Die in L.A. Are those the only two that have 4Ks now, or even recent releases? I think that's it.
That's a good question because Cruising doesn't have a 4K. I'm pretty sure of that.
No.
The French Connection does that not have a 4K at all? It doesn't, does it?
No, it barely has that Blu-ray, which is now out of print, or I think it's almost out of print because
that's crazy if you think about it. Because that movie won like the Academy Award. It doesn't have a fucking 4K.
Yeah.
And then you know, Killer Condoms has a 4K. So.
Yeah, right. So I mean, I'm thinking, you know, maybe in the next couple of years we'll start to see something like the French Connection. God forbid it's edit. I hope to God that they wouldn't release it in an edited version with lines cut out or anything. I probably wouldn't buy it if that was the case, but something like Bug or Cruising, you know, I would definitely be down for a Cruising 4K.
Oh my God.
I feel like Arrow would do that.
I do too.
They still
I
have
like they would, yeah.
In the UK at least.
I think they should do, if they could, man, they should put out like a some sort of like freaking collection or something like that. Like somebody should do that. You know, in the same kind of style. I'd say the rights are all over the place though. That's probably why they won't be able to do that. But just I don't know, man. Like what a career that guy had. And he's on par, as I think about like a lot of the other guys. You know, like if you look at the filmography of guys like John Carpenter and Cronenberg and, you know, David Lynch and guys like that just were like really independent style filmmaking, just had their own vision of what they wanted to do and carried out that vision. And no matter what, I mean, he's up there. He's got to be up there with like some of the greatest.
Oh, for sure. It's like a shame. Like, everybody gets old. We're all gonna be there someday, and then like I guess we're just lucky at the end just to have him having made these masterpieces. Just
Yeah.
a good, solid handful of what I would honestly consider masterpieces of film. Uh, and he was always humble about it too. I really feel like he just wasn't necessarily trying for a masterpiece ever. He was just trying to make something that he was proud of for himself and that he knew was a craft that he could be proud of. But he never was like trying to make, I don't even think he really even liked himself being considered as some kind of a legend or anything. You'd hear people say that to him and in these interviews, and he was always just kind of like, he kind of almost didn't write it off, but he was just very humble about it.
Well,
Like
he would always say something like, I don't think my film's a classic, but here's some films that I think are classics. You know what I mean? He would always like reference somebody else's films,
right,
which, you know, I heard about a lot of films I'd never heard of before because of just watching those interviews with him and him talking about like a lot of foreign films that I had no idea about.
for
So
sure. I've heard, I've found a couple. I still have obviously a bunch that I haven't seen yet, but I have put on my watch list films just based on what he had said about them in interviews or things like that. One that he would mention frequently was that French movie Diabolique.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
he had mentioned that a handful of times, and I had even seen that before I heard him mention it, and that is a clear. That's definitely one that I could see being an influence on him because it's in general that's a fantastic movie. Have you seen that one?
no, no, I,
Oh man, yeah, highly recommend that one. I mean, it's a Criterion title, I think, but it's just, I mean, you'll watch it and you can definitely see the impact that something like that would have on him. Um, it's a fantastic movie and very dark movie as well, kind of edge of your seat type stuff. And Citizen Kane, he mentioned a whole bunch of
of
times. I
course,
think that
yeah.
might be his favorite film.
He mentioned, I mean, he mentioned a lot of different, a lot of different filmmakers too. Over and over and over again, he would talk about them, and you can see that too in a lot of those YouTube videos as well. Like he's got like, and that's the one thing about Freaking. There's no lack of him being like on the internet. Like there is a shit ton of real documentaries, YouTube videos, just stuff that he did for films. I mean, commentaries, things like that. So I mean, you can find a lot of stuff related to Freaking as well. But uh Carter, I don't know what to say about that scene in particular, other than just to say like what it is. You know, I mean, I can tell him what the scene is itself, but
I don't know. I mean,
I
like
tell you about the context of it in this conversation. Yeah.
just the chicken. What is it? Chicken wing or chicken leg or something like that?
Chicken leg, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like you just people, if you haven't seen Killer Joe, it's one of those scenes that is better left off. Not you just need to see it. To you can't explain it. It's just so over the top, batshit insane. It's like Matthew McConaughey turns into Texas Chainsaw Next Generation again.
It is, yeah.
Like for that one scene, it's like you're watching him in that Texas Chainsaw movie again. It's hilarious, and I couldn't believe the ending of that film. I just
I couldn't either.
talk
But
about
it's very freaking though. That ending is very freaking. Like I know that it wasn't him or anything. It wasn't his script or anything like that. But it's very much a film that he would make. Yeah,
it's
he did make.
hilarious and like jaw-droppingly insane at the same time.
Yeah,
Fantastic, and that really like sealed the deal for that movie with me because the majority of the movie isn't like mind-blowing. It's okay. It's odd. It's an odd movie, but when you get down to that, and it's an uncomfortable movie really throughout the whole way through because of the subject matter of it.
it is. But I think it's a movie that kind of showed that he could still make something like that was disturbing and kind of, you know, out of nowhere he could make a very independent film like that again that was, just caught people's attention for a brief period of time there, like he did in the early 70s, and he could still do that at that time period, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's one that I don't own either, which I would love to see a new release of. I think there's just a really old, regular, standard ass Blu-ray that's out there for
Yeah.
Killer Joe.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about Sorcerer, I don't own that
I
either.
don't own it because there's no way to own, like, well, there is, but it's like
There
an
is, yeah.
older, yeah, it's like an older version. But one that came out, like, I think it was one of the last films that he made, and I never saw it, and I'm probably going to try to find it now, was the documentary. What was it? Like
The Devil and
Father, yeah, the Devil and
Father
Father
something.
something, Amaranth and it was supposed to be like a documentary about exorcisms and
the,
things like that.
the Devil and Father Amorth.
Amorth, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I never did see that. Heard it wasn't great.
I heard that too, but I feel like at this point, you might as well watch it, in kind of as kind of a tribute as well. And people say all kinds of shit isn't great, that fucking,
yeah.
is all a matter of taste.
Now, did you read that he had actually recently finished a film?
I had read that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to see the light of day. I would think that at this point it would, just because of who he is, and if he actually did finish it, that it probably will end up coming out in some way, shape, or form. I don't even remember what the title is. If anybody in the chat might know.
Somebody, I think Wild Wrangler says, the Kane Mutiny Court Martial 2023, William Friedkin's new movie, September 2023 release. Is that what he's talking about?
Yeah, the Kane Mutiny Court Martial, and yeah. I had not done like any research on that because I kind of heard rumblings about it a while ago and forgot about it, so I wasn't sure that he had finished it, but apparently he did finish it. So if it does come out, is it another documentary?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's an actual fucking.
It says on here it's set to premiere at the.
Somebody said the Venice Film Fest.
Yeah.
Or it was going to before he passed away. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that, but it's a 20. It says it's the 20th. It's a narrative film and his first since 2011's Killer Joe. So it's like an actual film and not a documentary.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, we're gonna have to see it at some point.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to do some reading on that. I'm definitely interested. I hope it's good. You never know. But
I hope he goes out on a high note. I mean,
yeah.
But so though, for the people in the chat, just out of curiosity, like maybe like an idea of like what's your favorite Friedkin film, what's your favorite scene, like some feedback about like some of these movies, because it is a tribute show. I mean, that's kind of what it's about.
Yeah.
I could give tribute to the man all fucking night long. We could go through every one of these films like the same way we did. I could do it again easily because I enjoy talking about them. But I'd rather just hear like what other people's kind of impressions are about some of these films too.
And I mean, yeah, like I think the whole point of one of the big points of this kind of a tribute is like if anybody hasn't seen some of these films that we've mentioned, like every one of them is worth seeking out like 100% and watching, because they're all quality. Some of his really lesser known films, and there's people that are going to have favorites and ones that they don't think are so good. And I mean, I do too. I mean, all these films can't be masterpieces, but he has enough masterpieces in his filmography that it's worth going and checking out something like The Boys in the Band or The Guardian or something. And those aren't really like popular movies or ones that anybody mentions. Like we've mentioned some of the best of the best, but like even something like I want to go now and look at and watch something like The Boys in the Band, or I wasn't a big fan of The Brinks Job. I was kind of on the fence about that. It's just okay. And that's a comedy film that he did, which wasn't that funny to me.
I don't think comedy was his strong suit, not intentional comedy anyway.
Yeah.
But KB Loves Movies says the car chase sequence in To Live and Die in LA is his favorite. It's good to have you on here too, KB, by the way. And Neil says that the Illuminati killed him just like they did Kubrick. What the fuck is it with him with these super chats? Dirk says The Exorcist, when you see Reagan's eyes in the dark when the Exorcist pulls up to the house. Sorry, nostalgia.
That's another great shot for sure. I forgot about that. That's cool. That's a good one.
So is Wild Wrangler saying that Cat Squad 1986 is his favorite, the TV movie?
Maybe he is. Maybe that is his favorite.
Never seen that. I could. That is a deep cut.
That's a real deep cut. I've never seen that one for sure. 1986.
Jackson Jack saying he doesn't think he's seen any other than The Exorcist. Well, that's a shame, sir, and you should stop being a shithead and go watch them.
Definitely. That's
TJ brings up a good one too. He says, besides films, I liked his weird and bloody crazy episode of Tales from the Crypt on a dead man's chest. Which is that the tattoo one?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one.
First Power 100 says, one of my favorite freaking movies that no one ever mentions is Rampage. Well, First Power, I'd love to mention it. I just can't fucking find it to watch. So, like, I mean, I'm sure if I think
Movie Junkie John posted a link maybe in the Discord while we were streaming.
Yeah. Well, so good. I'm gonna have to watch that. Yeah.
He did. It's online for streaming for free, apparently.
Streaming legally, of course.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. That's all we do here.
Disney's approval.
Yep. Darren says that Father MR documentary is well worth seeing. It's obviously different, but if you want to witness a real life exorcism, it's a must watch. So yeah.
Yeah, that was. I feel like people probably had the notion to think, oh, he's returning to the whole exorcism storyline again, and they're thinking like obviously Exorcist brain, but it's very different from the feature film The Exorcist for sure. It's a documentary and a much more modern documentary at that. So I had heard very mixed things and mostly negative about it.
I think that Darren might be the first person I've heard say anything good about that movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not against watching it or anything. I mean, if I can find it, I would watch it.
I would love to see it. Yeah.
Not familiar with that episode that he directed of Tales from the Crypt or whatever it was. I never saw the Hitchcock one that he directed. The final episode.
I haven't either. Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
So that would be one to seek out. I don't want to witness a real life exorcism.
I'm not sure how I feel about it either, but
tends to not go so well. I remember like the exorcism of Emily Rose. Remember that whole thing? Like that was based off of that real life girl that like died.
That's true. Speaking of which, you know how I like have an unnatural hatred for some like actors and actresses that like for no real reason other than kind of like what they look like, and sometimes it's for real reasons, but mostly it's just I just don't like the cut of somebody's jib. Jennifer Carpenter is another one of those fucking people. Like I do not like her.
Really?
I don't know why, but I just felt like I'd bring that up. That she's another one of those people.
You don't like her. You don't like her as much as you don't like Maggie Gyllenhaal.
No, I don't. There's nobody I don't like more than Maggie Gyllenhaal, except maybe Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise might be my least favorite, like actor or actress of all time. especially that people really like.
Maggie Gyllenhaal. That's fucking hilarious.
You know what killed me about Jennifer Carpenter though was when she did Dexter. I hated her fucking character in Dexter, and that's what ultimately like made me start kind of hating just her in general.
I haven't seen that Exorcism of Emily Rose like literally probably like right around the time it came out. So I don't really remember her in that.
Yeah,
But that was God, that was 2005 when that came out. And I have it on DVD, but it's literally been since 05 probably since I've seen it. So I don't remember like hating that movie though, to be honest. I kind of thought it was palatable in a way.
A Scratch says you didn't like what happened to her in Dragged Across Concrete. I've seen her Dragged Across Concrete.
Oh man, was she the girl in the bank?
I'm pretty sure she was. Yeah.
Oh, I did like Dragged Across Concrete. I forgot. Yep, that is her. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that talk about a down movie.
That dude's another guy who's very uncompromising. Like,
yeah,
his films are also very much like Friedkin.
That movie is pretty intense, that's for sure. And her part in that film is definitely not for the faint of heart.
No,
we'll say that. Very intense, not a happy movie.
But you know what this brings us to, though, which is what Carter was saying here. Are we ready for the body and the blood?
The body and the blood. The body and the blood. The body and the blood.
I've told you this, and I'm going to keep my word about this, that we're going to do on the road. I've already cleared this with everybody, and we're going to do it. You know,
really?
Yeah, that's going to happen because I know what's going to happen with that movie, and I want to be there to see it and to talk about it. So, yeah.
What wouldn't you shit if like you came out and go, it's not that bad?
I really would. Like if it all that like led up to me just being like, oh, that movie was fucking awesome. Yeah. I'd somehow
I doubt it.
Yeah, I think the odds are very much against that movie. Yeah.
That'll be a great on the road though, for sure. Cause I feel like if that terrible Netflix terrible Netflix Texas Chainsaw would have been in the theaters, I feel like that would have been a great on the road for that.
Yeah,
because of how that was awful. But just for the entertainment of an on the road episode, it would have been great.
Oh God,
I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm gonna see that Exorcist movie in the. I kind of now that
you're come on.
Do you like? I kind of have to see it in the theater because you're just like,
especially now.
Yeah, but even so, like, how bad is it going to be? It's one of those things you hate to give them the ticket money for that, but you almost
that's kind of true. But on the same token, like, I have a feeling that movie's going to be a big hit no matter what. Like, just based off of the fact that it looks like The Evil Dead, and like people are really fooled by movies that look like that now, and I feel like it's going to be a hit. Unfortunately, I feel like it's going to suck, but it's going to make a lot of money.
You know, I was like kind of in with the movie as far as the trailer went. I felt like I was in on it for the first section of the trailer when it was like building it up. I was kind of thinking, okay, I'm kind of in with this. Like, I'm not hating this. And then when you get to the body and the blood shit and all that, and you're like, never mind. Never mind.
Well, that was probably the point too where I was watching it and I knew, like, when they started that pitch modulator shit on the voice, I was like, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is what it's going to be.
Exactly.
But so let's see. Anthony had a good question here too. Which version of The Exorcist is your favorite, the theatrical or the director's cut? I like the regular theatrical, man. Like the director's cut, it has like the one scene from the director's cut everybody knows is the fucking spider scene, but other than that, there's just some flash scenes of the head and shit. It
Mhm.
doesn't. And then there's the one conversation with the priest that's extended. And other than that, there's not a lot else that really goes
Yeah,
on.
it's not terrible. I mean, I would definitely recommend if you haven't seen the movie to watch the theatrical cut first, and then the spider sequence down the stairs isn't worth it alone. I mean, it's like it's a cool outtake. It might have been. It really does
Yeah,
feel like a deleted scene that was put in there. Like it doesn't
it
fit.
does.
Like it doesn't
No.
fit that well. It's too much into that spooky jump scare horror movie thing, and the rest of the movie's not like that. So
Yeah.
it would have fit better as like an extra on the disc as a deleted scene or something. It doesn't really need to be in the movie.
Carter says Saw 10 is about to set the world on fire. Is it? Okay. TJ says if Friedkin was alive, he would tell the truth about what he thought of the new Exorcist film. Well, I'm definitely going to tell the truth about it.
Yeah, that's what we all got to do that for Friedkin.
Yeah.
Just be blatantly honest and unflinching when you're reviewing The Exorcist, which you would be anyway.
This is an interesting question, man. Darren says they did do this because I remember like we talked about this. They showed the new Exorcist film to a test audience. Do you think Friedkin got to see a cut?
I don't think he'd go. I don't think
I
he
don't
would
think he cared. Yeah,
No, he
I don't think he
didn't.
would have cared at all.
He didn't even really like. I don't think he was on board for like the third movie either.
No,
Like
which is weird, but yeah, you're right.
I honestly feel like if any of the movies he would have respected, it would have been that one. But I don't really think, as far as what I had heard him talk about, like he kind of just didn't give a shit about anything past the first one. He was not interested in what they were doing with it.
You're right. So he probably, yeah, even if they did like want him to see it, he probably would have told him to fuck off, I'm sure.
He didn't care.
What do we think of The Guardian? You haven't seen it, have you, man?
No, and that I feel like it's a little bit of a. I know it's not a popular or the most well liked film of his, but I still feel in a way that it's almost a little bit of like a sacrilege to say that I haven't seen it, considering that I would say he's my favorite director. And I know it's not mainly widely considered as a great movie, but I do have it kind of high on my list to watch because there is a level of intrigue to it for me. I don't know what it is about it. I've watched like the trailer and I've seen some people talk about it. I know Garrett's a fan of that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna have to watch it. I mean,
well, it's.
I'm not expecting to hate it in a way, if that makes sense. I don't know. I mean,
I'll just leave it at that. I mean, the only thing I watched it, not too long ago for the show, but the only thing I can say about it, it's got some good gore sequences in it, which is odd because you wouldn't think that based on what type of movie it is, but it does have some good gore. The story is a fucking mess, but watch it, see what you think. Like that was just kind of my takeaway from it.
like I was expecting not to really like Killer Joe or Bug, to be honest. Like I was more surprised that I liked those movies. So maybe that's kind of why I'm not necessarily. I'm kind of hoping that I'll feel like the same way about The Guardian, but I can't say until I've seen it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it. We'll see. We'll see. But so yeah, I feel like we're closed in on 2 hours, and that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good run. I thank everybody in the chat though that's come in and kind of helped pay tribute to Friedkin because he was one of the best, man, just one of the best overall directors out there. One of my favorites. I know he's one of your favorites. And
Yeah.
Go back and watch the Weekend at Friedkin series. If you haven't seen that, I feel like it's a solid series, kind of like talking about those films too.
And go back and
Yeah.
watch the films that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
It's the perfect time. Some of them are not easy to find as far as streaming goes and all that, but even if you have to go to some sketchy sites or find a cheap Blu-ray somewhere, they're worth it. Like these movies that are not widely talked about as much.
Especially like, I mean, if you haven't seen Cruising or
Oh, yeah.
Sorcerer or To Live and Die in LA, then those are the big ones for me. Like,
Absolutely. Same here. And the French Connection with that too.
yeah.
But it's a shame. I didn't expect, that's like you never expect this stuff, but that really did put a damper on my day today. I really did spend time like thinking about Friedkin and like how impactful his movies have been to me and just how I enjoy listening to him talk on all these YouTube interviews and videos and panels that he's done. Those are all 100% worth looking up on YouTube, and I've watched them more than once, like each of them, and just to listen to him talk, just because he's that interesting and a chill, laid back guy with quippy, funny lines and smart ass comments that he would make, and just those are as worth watching as his films are. Those interviews that he did on YouTube, so I definitely highly recommend those two. It's sad that he's gone, but like we said, I don't think you could ask for a better career.
No, I don't either. Like, just yeah, that's true, TJ. I didn't think about that, but Friedkin and Paul Rubens in the same brief period of time there.
Yeah.
It's a shame. But just a couple of updates real quick. So supposedly the new computer is supposed to be here on Friday. That's the last kind of update that I got.
Nice.
So I think that this will be the last, unless something happens. I think this will be the last show. No, that's not true. The Cannibal Holocaust. So Wednesday is at 10 o'clock is the Cannibal Holocaust commentary with Garrett. So that I don't know how that's going to go, man, because that's 3 people that are going to be on there. I don't know if my computer will fucking make it through that. Like, it seems to do okay with 2 people, and like if we're just talking, not if I'm playing a video. If I'm playing a video or anything, fuck it. Like, it's not gonna let me do anything. But with 3 people, we'll see. But
I'll definitely be there for that. I'll be watching along on my TV because it's been a while since I've seen Cannibal Holocaust. So, but I'm a big fan of it. I just can't wait to see Garrett's reaction.
I can't. This is gonna be amazing.
He says he hasn't watched it in 20 years.
I'm sure he hasn't. Yeah,
I believe. So that'll be great.
That's going to be amazing. So Wednesday night, 10 o'clock, and that will be, and fittingly enough, that'll probably be the last one that's ever done on this laptop. Thank God. And so yeah, tune in for that. And if you haven't already hit the like button on this video, hit the like button. It only takes like a second. It helps us like in terms of content and kind of getting to do new things as well. If you haven't checked us out over at End of the Dead Pit on Instagram or just deadpit.com or Dead Pit on Patreon, do that. Yeah. And if you haven't watched any of Friedkin's films other than The Exorcist, you should do that tonight. Go on Amazon, buy one. Fucking, I bought the Sorcerer on there. It's like $3 or something crazy. So,
good. Damn.
Well worth $3 or $4 to rent. Yeah. Thank you, Matt, though, for coming on. Like, I know you're a huge fan of Friedkin's as well, and it's always good to have you on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for we had been talking for a while about doing this To Live and Die in LA video and just hadn't really got around to it. And then obviously with the news today, it was kind of like, let's just do something. And we got to include the 4K in there a little bit. So that's fine with me. I love talking about these movies. So it's great.
Yeah, they're infinitely rewatchable, though. But big thanks to everybody that's been in the chat, though, again. And hopefully nothing like this happens. Nobody else. We lose anybody else. I hope not. But
keep an eye on Argento. Keep a close eye on Argento.
Yeah, somebody needs to protect that man.
Yeah,
because he's like one of the last ones left, man. And how the fuck is it, by the way? I was thinking about this today too. John Carpenter has outlived almost everybody that was his peer.
Yeah.
And
That's
he
true.
looks like Lopan for real now, man. He's been smoking cigarettes for like 50, 60 years, and he like
The devil's
everybody
lettuce.
else is gone except Argento. I think he's the last like remaining guy. You know,
I don't know. I mean, and how old is Carpenter now? Is he 80?
I don't know, man. He's got to be getting close to it.
He is 75, so he's getting up there. And speaking of Argento, I mean, I know that Argento and Friedkin were fans of each other as well, as far as those movies go.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, Carpenter is up there too. But I know Argento he's like 85, I think, right? I think
he is yeah.
Yeah.
Because like I looked that up recently because I was thinking, you know, I would love to, if there's one guy left that I would want to meet at a convention, it would be Argento. And then I looked up his age and I was like, he ain't gonna do no fucking conventions over here. Like at that age, like, I mean, he's not gonna.
He just did he did that last movie, you know, The Dark Glasses. I haven't seen it yet. And then he acted in that Gaspar Noé movie, Vortex, which I haven't seen that yet either, but he plays just an old man with dementia in that movie. So it's going to be a tough watch, I feel like. It might be one to watch before he eventually passes away, because that wouldn't be one I would want to watch after he's gone. It just kind of feels it's already depressing enough.
It's getting sad though out there with, I mean, all these people are just that were these big names are just kind of passing away. But I did want to say too, though, huge thanks to Laura Marie Taylor for the interview. I thought that she did an amazing job. I think that was like one of my favorite interviews that we've done since the resurgence or whatever you want to call it. It's incredibly entertaining and a lot of good stuff in there. Not just about Friday the 13th Part 2, but she also did a great kind of cult film called Neighbors. That's
I haven't actually seen that Neighbors film. Don't tell me Uncle Bill's camera froze. I feel like Uncle Bill's computer shit the bed. Is anybody in the chat seeing this? Or is it me that's frozen? Oh, shit. Well, no. Uncle Bill's just frozen.
Give us a thumbs up.
Up your butt.
Like, subscribe. And if you subscribe, here's something else you can do. Once you subscribe, you can click the bell notification, right? And it'll notify you anytime that Dead Pit puts up new shit.
Or don't. I really don't give a if you do or
I
don't.
want you to. I want you to.
I don't care.
Let's keep our community growing here on YouTube.
I don't like it. I don't want you to touch nothing.
Listen, they need to do that now.
No, don't you dare touch it.
Thumbs up. Subscribe. And click that bell.
There's all kinds of wonderful shirts over at shop.deadpit.com. Simply the best horror shirts. On TeePublic, there are others, but they all suck. You can get some Dead Pit radio shirts. You can get Last South on the Left. The Hills Have Eyes. Texas Chainsaw. Oh, wait, you can't say Texas Chainsaw. All kinds of shirts, folks. You're going to love them. Shop.deadpit.com.
Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. Dead Pit on Patreon.com is the only place to check out a complete archive of the old Dead Pit radio shows all the way back from 2005 on, in addition to the midweek shows, fan commentaries, exclusive podcasts, and much more. Dead Pit on Patreon.com if you're interested. Tiers start at only $1.